Well, howdy, physics sleuths and inquisitive souls, and welcome again to yet another lecture of dynamic gravity. So, I was planning on going over neutrino oscillations today with you. Um, because I've been doing some work on that recently, and I wanted to share my progress. But then something happened last night. I'm high as a kite, like I always is. 'Cause I don't give a fuck. And I think God sent me another vision. Like I really do. It really does. And this one is on how the brain operates, specifically in regards with working with the soul, like how the two meet, if that makes any sense. And this is something I've been seeking for a long time now, because this is important information if you want to know how to boost, your brain. So, or not your brain, but your soul, like how to do it through the brain. Which is something I'm very interested in, is boosting my soul to the strongest soul possible. So there's this is important information I've been searching for, like, man, almost a decade now. And last night, I think God trickled a little bit on me and gave me, I don't want to say all, but half of the information that I was seeking, which is a pretty good start, I think so, personally. Um, so I'm going to go over that with you today, okay? And notice how I'm not saying this is 100% a fact, like, a vision from God. I'm not certain on this one. I think it is. It was a tame one. It wasn't, super powerful and overwhelming or anything, but the flow of it seemed very similar to the experience with God, like a communing, so to speak, with Him. So, as of right now, if I had to guess, I would say it's probably 75, maybe even pushing 80% certainty that this is information given to me by God for whatever reason. It's not the highest. I definitely, I'm not. If I don't believe it's 100%, I'm not going to tell you it's 100%. But it's enough that I'm paying the fuck attention, and I think you should too. So many years ago, probably like 4 now, maybe at least 3. I did a video back then how I thought a soul is generated and maintained within the human brain, okay? And only the human brain, because God had tinkered with our ancestors, Australopithecus, to give us, this special half demigod brain that is capable of, performing the feats that we are capable of doing that no other animal on this planet can do. And one of those feats is generate a soul with our brain. And I believe in the video I went over 2 or 3 or 4 years ago on this channel, you can look it up, that I said that I believe what's going on is you have a circle of electrical inputs, outputs, whatever, electrical brain waves, which are being ran around in your brain constantly, forever, until you die. And that when you die, the cessation of this circle, constant brain waves like alpha, beta, delta, gamma, whatever's going on in your neurons, that when you die, that's what allows your soul to finally be released from the body, because it's not trapped anymore. I believe now that's probably because a moving charge, an electric charge that moves, creates a magnetic field, and the magnetic field confines electric forces. And I believe that's one of the ways that the soul is being confined into the brain during life, is through the constant motion of electrical signals. That little magnetic field, tiny, is more than enough to lock the soul into place, I believe. Which is why when you die and your brain ceases to have any activity at all, even if you're in a coma, you still have some brain activity, right? Usually, depending on the coma. Um, and so your soul is still trapped. So this answers the question: when you go into a coma for 20 years and then die in that coma, when did your soul escape? Did it escape when you got hit in the coma, or did it escape when you died? And using this logic, we can safely say normally it's going to escape when you die, not when you get hit in the coma. So your soul is trapped in your body for until the day you die, even if you're in a coma and you're brain dead, because you still have activity in your brain that's locking the soul into place. Okay, so there's a little tidbit add, but another thing. Well, I guess let's just dip it in. Let's just dip it into this rabbit hole. Let's just fucking cannonball in this bitch. And let's just go. Let's just do it. Okay, so soul, right, is the part of us that is God, the demigod, right? The soul part. This monkey part really isn't godly. He did some stuff to our brain to give us a soul, and that is where our demigod part comes into. Okay, so only humans have a soul, and one of the things that the human brain can do that really no other religion, or not religion, but no other animal on the planet can do, is to produce sustained gamma wavelengths, brain waves. Okay, now, many things on the planet can create gamma waves, but they're very short bursts. They're not a sustained thing. Like when you sit there and you're pontificating on like calculus for like an hour straight, your brain is producing gamma waves for an hour straight, okay? There's no other animal on the planet that can do that. Only human brain. That's it. I mean, maybe you could argue like a whale brain. I don't know if they've ever looked into that. I mean, I don't think they can, but I'm just saying, if anything were to have any chance to be able to compete with the human brain on that level, it would probably be like a whale brain, because they're mammals, they're very large, and they're very intelligent, and they have parts of the brain, some of them that we don't even have. So their brains are more evolved than us in many ways. But can they? Probably not. Only God can tell right now. Unless we do the work. All right. So, but one of the beliefs that I have is that the human soul does not develop into the body, into our brain, until you're about 10 years old, okay? So, if you have a question of like an infant, a little baby that is born and dies, does that baby's soul go to heaven or hell? The baby doesn't have a soul. The soul takes years to create. So it's only until you hit adolescence, and you're around 8, 9, 10 years old, that your brain is finally capable of starting to really lay down some serious, gamma, wavelengths, where you're gonna be able to create and sustain a soul. Okay, and I realized I just am looking, and it looks like around the age of 10, there's a few things that happen. Okay. First of all, around the age of 9, 10 is when the human brain is about its full size, so it won't grow any bigger. So it's done growing physically, at least size-wise, and it's not going to grow a whole much more in complexity. It will a little bit, and there will be a lot of pruning processes going in the brain, which is why they say the brain continues to develop until you're 25. Okay, you have different systems that will start to prune all the unnecessary brain pathways that do not serve the brain. Okay, neuroplasticity, you can call this. Okay. And so that process, neuroplasticity, where your brain starts to change its itself to accommodate its environment in the best way possible and to make you the best possible being it can make for that environment doesn't really start happening until you're 9, 10, 11 years old, okay? And the limbic system is one of the first, I guess, to complete the remodeling process where it's done by the time you're like, 10 to 13, maybe 12, let's say. But there are typically a lot more, and it keeps going until like, you're in your 20s. But the process begins for most all of the systems of the brain like when you're around 8, 9, 10 years old. And only once this process has really gotten a foothold can your brain sustain and generate a soul for some reason, I believe personally. This is what I believe. If you've ever seen evidence of a ghost, of a soul, of a child that, let's say, was below the age of 8, I'd like to see it. Okay? I'd like to see the baby ghost. If there's ever been a fucking sighting of one in all of human history, I'd like to hear about it. I don't think there is, and I don't think you're going to find one. At least any compelling evidence of it or cases. Because I think I'm right. I tell you if I didn't. How many times have I sat here and told you on this fucking channel, I don't know. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm working on it. I worked on it and I worked on it, and now I'm looking at you in the face and I'm telling you, I do have all the answers. You should listen to me. Alright? So, that's one of the things, okay? So now, we got neurons, right? Neurons are what the brain is made of, okay? There's other cells too, like glial cells and whatnot. They're your lymphatic system that, operate during your sleep cycle to flush out all of the toxic waste from your brain. That's why you go to sleep. So your neurons shrivel up and your glial cells activate and flush out your lymphatic pathways and push out all the crap through your blood-brain barrier where it can be disposed of through the rest of your system, okay? This is all stuff, okay? But neurons effectively have this architecture where they will have a bunch of inputs, okay, and one output. I don't know, maybe there's some that have like 2 outputs, but for the most part, a neuron has at least one, typically more than one, can have a lot, like hundreds of tendrils, inputs into this neuron cell. And then it will perform an algorithm, okay? And then if the algorithm checks out and the neuron, the biological algorithm it performs, then it will pass the signal along to the next, where it will then get inputted and it will be decided on that neuron whether it should pass or not through the algorithmic process of the biology that's going on in the neuron cell, okay? So what is an algorithm? An algorithm is what they used to call AI before they got this new AI model for scraping databases and calling that AI. Before, the AI used to be called algorithms because that's the only way they knew how to emulate a living thing. Okay, you have an input, and then a set of rules are done on that input to decide whether it's good or not to push it out into the output, or what to push out the output, okay? And the set of rules can be very complicated. You can have all sorts of crazy shit depending on how complicated the algorithm is. So how complicated is the neuron as an algorithm? Well, we know it's complicated enough that it can handle hundreds of tendrils, but there's a lot of times it only has a couple of tendrils, a few tendrils. So like 3 inputs and 1 output. That's a pretty simple algorithm, okay? Which is good because keep in mind, neurons aren't very smart cells, okay? They're pretty stupid. They're just multiple inputs, algorithmic biological process determine output. That's all it is. And when you put a bunch of those together, now you have like a bunch of and or gates, and now you have the coding per se of software. Okay, it's like software development with a lot of and or not gates coming into the hardware and deciding what the software is going to do with that. Neurons, same thing. That's how the software gets created from the hardware bits of the neurons. Okay, the neurons aren't very smart, but put them together and they can perform things. We're going into this we're going into this fucking this rabbit hole. Cannonball, all right, cannonball style. I promise you, cannonball. We're going fucking cannonball. Chill. So so neurons are not very smart. Okay, now this is good because when the brain is developing, like when you're a child, okay, little child, like baby, it's very chaotic. Like I said, they don't have the brain organized yet. They haven't done this whole reorganization process, okay, this remodeling process yet. So the neurons are pretty stupid, okay. But once this neuroplasticity takes effect and this remodeling process, it takes effect, and then the neuron's purpose in the brain, after it's been remodeled properly, after the age of, let's say, 10, it does not change ever. The neuron will die with that same algorithm encoded into it on what it's going to do. The neuron is stupid. It does not change. It's too fucking stupid. It's not like a neuron's like, and today I'm going to become a completely different type of neuron. A neuron has a different algorithmic code that I'm going to follow, whether I'm going to pass this fucking signal through to that guy. Neurons are not like that. Once the algorithm has been encoded into them biologically from the, how the cell architecture is in the neuron, that's it. The neuron will die. You can create new neuron cells and have new pathways that will bypass that neuron if you don't want it or need it anymore. As it serves purpose very well, depending on how neuroplasticity is kicking in. But the fucking neuron does not change. It does not recode itself. Once it's coded and established, it's done for life. Dunsies. Okay? And this is good because if it didn't do this, dunsies for life, you wouldn't be able to have lifelong memories. Okay? So this is how your memories are established. Okay? You create a memory, all right, and this pinky white brain tissue, and it has not been encoded yet, and your brain's like, it's like a fresh hard drive that hasn't had anything written on it yet. And so your brain's like, okay, we'll put this memory, this is good enough to be kept, we want to keep this for whatever reason, and so we're going to put this in here. And then when you're in your sleep cycle, under DMT, then that will help solidify and transfer that memory from short-term to long-term memory and really heart set it into your memory. Okay? So you need a good night's sleep and dreams to really have lifelong memories. Go figure. This is not my saying. This is just what a lot of scientists saying, and I agree with them, but only to a certain limit. I'm not going to stay on that hill and die on it, okay? But I do agree to a certain limit. But that's what they say, okay? So you will have a memory, okay? And then in that memory, these neurons will create a specific chain, and then they will be encoded on how the biological algorithm is going to work, okay? And if you have a long chain of them, big enough as you have for a big memory. It's gonna reach out to different parts of the brain if it's an important radical memory enough, right? Which is why when you remember certain memories, like you get a scent or something, or like perfume or whatever, and it brings back a memory, it hits all different parts. It hits like the feeling part of your brain. It can hit like the audio part of your brain. It can hit like the smell, all different parts of your brain will be affected by the same memory because it's hitting all different parts. It's actually creating a network of neurons, okay, that will create um, say it'll start from your brainstem, okay, and they go toot toot, it'll go here, it'll go here, and it'll go to here and here, and then that will be your memory set up. Or it could also be a neuroplastic created program that your brain is running, like how to throw a perfect spiral football, right? All muscle memory, because it's brain memory and on your brain cells. That's how it's done. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Neuroplasticity. Do it a million times, and now you're perfect at it. Okay. So depending on what it is going to depend on how the neuron train is going to unfold from the brainstem all the way to bloop 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 bloop, all parts of your brain. Memories go to different parts. A muscle memory goes to different parts. All different things go to different parts of the brain and are activated for that particular memory to be used for whatever. Okay. So when you have a long line of things, you can have radical things that happen, okay? It's like batteries. When you add a bunch of batteries together, if you do them in like parallel, I think you get like higher voltage but same amperage. And if you do them in linear, I think you get higher, like same voltage but higher amperage. Okay. I think that's how it goes. I have to remember. It's been years since I've learned this, but so you have like electric eels, right? They will have like all of these little battery cells, let's say, that are lined up to all put out, like say the same voltage but different amperage. So the electric eel will open up these cells, open up the discharging electrolytes simultaneously, and it can generate hundreds of volts. The largest cord is 500 volts with a current up to 1 amp, which is enough to kill you if it hits you in the right spot. Easily could kill you. But, all right. And the reason why is because any one of these cells are only putting out very small micro voltage and amperage, okay? But when you line them all up and have them fire at once, now it acts like, instead of one battery, it acts like one giant battery that's just releasing all that energy very quickly. Not instantaneously, because it has to go down the chain, but very quickly. So quickly it's instantaneous to our perception of it, okay? Neurons also work in the same way. Where if you have enough of these that are reading the algorithm and is saying, okay, pass the signal along now, bloop, and so this one, okay, pass the signal along, bloop, and so the chain continues just like you would have an electric eel, okay? How it will produce its electricity, same way, effectively, but a lot differently, okay? Now, we need to go into brain waves before we cap this off and round this circle, okay? The way that, remember, I say brain waves are generating your soul, but they're also your consciousness, which means that animals aren't really conscious like we are. Like, animals don't really sit around and pontificate about like how that bear snuck up on them and almost ate them. They don't think about, like, why did that bear do that? Did I do something to that bear? What should I do again the next time that happens and that bear comes? They don't do this. They don't pontificate like this, okay? You need to have sustained gamma wavelengths for this sort of thinking. And animals cannot do it. They cannot do it. They can't. They're animals. That's why they're animals, and we're fucking demigods. We're not in the same fucking category. All right? Not the same. But gamma is the important one. For some reason, that's the threshold where interesting shit starts to happen. Okay? But you have all these others. They're going on. And the way this is working, I describe this is in my old video as it hopping around from part of the brain to part of the brain. Okay? I now believe that was wrong. I mean, it is right. There is a circle of electricity being done that's creating your brain waves and your consciousness and dealing with your soul, all three in one. Okay, but as I said, it was traveling around this brain. It's not really accurate. What I believe now is more accurate. Is these are all different parts of your brain. Okay, now we have your brain stem and cerebellum, okay? This is like what's called your reptilian brain. This is essentially where all of your thoughts are created or generated from. Okay? Depending on the inputs it gets from the upper brain. So upper brain senses stuff like your ocular lobe will see something like a bear sneaking up on you. Okay? And it will go to your brainstem, and your brainstem will be like, fear. And so then that will pass through what's called the left brain interpreter module. And I'm going to have to do a whole nother fucking lecture on this, which I was planning to do years ago, but I got sidetracked with my whole gravity, anti-gravity matter rabbit hole, which, did a lot. You should check out those videos if you care about physics or gravity at all. I cracked it all. I'm the guy. Fuck you if you think otherwise. You're stupid. You don't know. I know. I would tell you if I didn't know. And I'm telling you, I know. Okay? So, this will send something like single bear running at us, and then your brain still will be like, fear. It's not too smart, okay? And this will pass through your left brain interpreter module, which I will have to do an episode on because that's so fucking important. And then it'll go and start, working with parts of your brain, right? Go to your frontal lobe, and it will go memory of bear. What is bear? And then it'll go back to brainstem, all right? And then brainstem will be like, yep, bear, scary. So now it will go to something else, like, okay, temporal lobe. Memories of bears. Then you remember seeing a bear eat a dude alive, and you're like, go back to brainstem. Yep, bear, scary. And so then it'll continue, right? So it'll go to something else, like motor cortex, right? So, okay, what can I do? Run from bear. Okay, so then I go back to brainstem, and it goes, to the motor cortex. I'm like, okay, start running procedure. Run away from bear. And they'll go to back to visual cortex. Check where bear is. Run opposite direction. And it goes. You see how it's one simple thing. You're noticing a bear, and your brain is deciding how to fucking deal with this situation and how it's all working. Okay, but if you notice, in between every single action that the mammalian brain does, the upper brain does, it will have to check back in with the brainstem, because at the end of the day, your brainstem is the actual nitty-gritty core of your brain. That is where all of your thoughts originate. Now, you can say your pontification occurs in your mammalian brain, your upper part, but the actual origination of thought comes from your brainstem, okay? And this has been proven. All right? So, what I'm trying to tell you is the way that this circle goes of brain waves, electrical energy, is it's not hopping around from your up around and sharing your mammalian brain. It's all going from like here, brainstem, here, back to 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 brainstem. That's the circle, okay? It looks like a star where it goes out and it comes back. It goes out and comes back like a spoke. Out and comes back. Out and comes out. It's like a spoke circle, okay? It still makes a circle. All in all, it's contiguous, but it's in the shape of a spoke where it goes out, does something, and comes right back. Goes out, does something, comes right back. Goes out from that part of the brain, come right back. This is how you have this continuous loop of brainwave electricity that is constantly firing in your brain, doing stuff. Okay, it's constantly coordinating with your brainstem on what the hell it should do next. And your brainstem is trying to figure this out with the help of all the other lobes of its brain that it's constantly boop, boop, boop. And I don't know if this loop has to be time-wise, chronological, like it has to go this part of the brain, and this part of the brain, and this part of the brain, and this part of the brain, or if it can skip and do this. It seems like it might have to actually be both. Like it is definitely chronologically based, where it has to go in a certain thing, but there can always be exceptions and breaking of the rules, exceptions to the rules, if you understand. That's the way it seems to be to me, but I'm telling you, I don't know this yet for sure. Okay, this part, right? But that is how I believe it all has to work. Okay, so now if we go back to our electric eel, okay, we have a long chain of, let's say, in our brain of neurons, okay, and they're all going to fire at once. Now they're very, very small electrical stimulation, or that's being output and passed along with these neurons. It's much less than you would have like in this cell in an electric eel. But just like the electric eel, when you have enough of these neurons that are chained up together that fire at once, you have pretty incredible things. Okay, I would assume it'd be more like an electrical thing than an amperage thing, because amperage is more dangerous than electricity, than voltage. So in your brain, you probably want to go with the safer bet. So my guess probably higher voltage, lower amperage, but I don't know that. I'm not sure about that. Okay, but I do know this. These all fire together in a chain that's a memory, I say, of how to throw a perfect spiral football. Okay, so when that happens, you will have a long cell of neurons, bloop, 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 that'll fire in very rapid succession. Okay, it's like pulses, but it's extremely like, man, like I think gamma waves, or what are they like? What are they? Here we go, gamma waves. About 25 hertz. I think that's gigahertz, isn't it? No, 30 to 100 hertz. Okay, so that's hertz. So that's how many times a second it's going to be firing. So you can have like fire up to 100 times a second. Okay, so it'll be like bloop, 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 very, very quickly. All right, doing something, and it'll only do it for like say a short, brief periods of time. It's not going to do that same signal like that forever. It's only going to do it as long as it needs to for your brain to register what the fuck is going on, and then it's going to be like, okay, I'm good. Cease it. So let's fucking close this loop. You have brain waves in your brain, okay, doing all these brain waves, all right, and they're in your brain, and they're going bloop, 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 constantly, forever and ever, until the day you die, like very fast hertz, okay. And that is your brain waves, and that is your consciousness. This act of what's going on here, that is your consciousness, okay. That is what's keeping you awake and generating your soul and sustaining your soul into your body as well. All right, now you have a neuron chain starting from your brainstem that goes do 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 firing up a memory how to throw a perfect spiral football, because you're throwing a football and you got to remember how to throw the perfect spiral football to do this every single time. Bloop. So this lights up. Bloop, 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 bloop. So you have this electrical signal, this wave that's going all around your brain, each time going back to your brainstem. And now you have this new pathway of neurons that are firing in this middle of this brain wave while it's doing this, that are basically transferring knowledge to this brain waves, okay, which is your soul, effectively, so to speak. It's not the electricity of the brainwave is your soul, but this is related to your soul so much that we're going to just call it the act of your soul right now at this particular time for simplicity's sake, even though it's much more complicated than that. And I don't have the answers to that. But so these neurons are firing, creating their own electrical signal waves, like electric eel does, okay? And when it does this, it's going to interfere, disrupt, and interact with your normal brain waves. So now your normal brain waves are going to be moving and oscillating and gyrating and jiggling all over the place because of this neuron that's firing. And once your brain waves, because it keeps going around, like, what is the signal? What is this? What is this? And it starts deciphering the signal and be like, okay, I know what this is. This is telling me how to throw a perfect spiral football, which is useful because I am in the process of throwing a football to my friend. And so this is what I'm trying to say, is how information is spread through the brain, and most importantly, to your soul. A non-physical thing. Your brain is a physical thing using physical electricity, but because that electricity also creates and sustains and generates your soul, when the brain is using one for one function, it also affects and interacts with the other one at the same time. Okay? So, does your soul have memories? Yes, your soul does have memories. We now know this as a fact. Your soul can retain memories. But, always that caveat, isn't there? Will it ever be as good, reliable, or vivid as your physical brain that actually had the memory stored on it and physical, a chain of neurons? No, it'll never be that level. But yes, you can transfer information into your soul through this mechanism. Okay? And you might be like, how do you know all this? Yeah. Cool, bro. I've been doing a lot of research into this, and one of the things that I've been looking into is anesthesiology, okay? Because we don't have a whole lot of ton of reliable data when it comes to the brain and how it operates and what the fuck's going on with it, okay? We just don't have it. There is a lot of data out there, but a lot of it is unreliable at best. But one of the people who do know what they're talking about is anesthesiologists. And if there's one thing an anesthesiologist knows, it is how to shut down consciousness. Okay? They don't put you to sleep. They literally turn off your consciousness. You go out. And the way they do that is like propofol. He's talking about this. He all talks about all different ones too. He talks about nitrous oxide, dextrometronium, ketamine. Yeah, he goes into other ones. But basically what he's saying is that you have these GABA receptors in your upper mammalian brain, like your cortical, whatever, cortex. And the propofol will interfere with those GABA receptors. It will block them so they can't be utilized so freely. And then once that happens, now you have these chemical or electrical oscillations that occur within the brain waves, okay? And when these oscillations are occurring because your cells are freaking out because their GABA receptors are being blocked and they can't communicate with anything, and only half-assed so, and so it's only creating this intermittent oscillation as compared to a full brain a wave, um, then that is when you go unconscious. And this is what he's explaining. And this and a bunch of other stuff. It's a very interesting video. Emory Brown, Harvard Med, The Dynamics of Brain Under Anesthesia. Highly recommend it if you're interested in this. It's a like 34-minute video. Amazing. But one of the things he does confirm is that yes, it is all going to the brain stem. Okay, it is not blocking any connections from the cortex to the cortex. It is blocking the connections from the cortex to the brain stem. And he goes off on an experiment where they were able to verify this by they had like a cat or something, and they cut the brain stem below the brain stem, and then after and above the brain stem. And when they did it in a way that where they were, because of the way they cut it, both different procedures, they were able to justify that these oscillations that were coming were from the inability of the brain stem to communicate freely with the cortex. It is still able to communicate on some level. It's not blocking 100% of the interaction or communication, but it's enough that it doesn't hear a clear signal. It just hears gibberish and garbage. And so it doesn't know whether the algorithm, the neuron cell, doesn't know, according to its biological, very simple, stupid algorithm, like I tell you they are, what to do with that, because it's being intercepted with the GABA enough that it doesn't see what it's expecting to see. So it doesn't pass the signal along, and if it doesn't pass the signal along, then your brain loop, the loop of the electrical brain, ceases. It gets stopped. Well, maybe not completely stopped. I mean, the other parts are still communicating with this brainstem, but not the ones that are being affected by the propofol or ketamine or whatever. Let's say, okay. And so when that happens, even though the other parts of the brain are communicating with the brainstem fine, because of this one or two parts can't come back, the loop is severed, and now you lose consciousness. You're just out like a light. Like, that's how important this loop of brain activity, brain waves are. If you interfere to where it cannot complete the loop, even though it goes all the way around, because the loop is not complete, you're unconscious, you're as good as dead until this is fixed. You cease to exist. And your brain is still generating the loops in other parts of the brain, so your soul is not, it's not like because you're unconscious, your soul just, well, I'm not bound to this fucking guy anymore. Fuck you! I'm out! Ah! Yeah, no. It's not quite like that. But yeah, this guy was able to give me lots of great insight into how the brain actually behaves with the brain waves and consciousness, and how they're related, and all the interchemical signals with the electrical signals are related. So highly good. Let me make sure that I didn't forget anything. I wrote down everything God gave me last night when I was high, because I know I wasn't gonna remember shit. I was like, well, I have to write it all down. It works in the brain a lot. Okay, yep. Okay, yep. Got it all. So, yeah. I think we hit everything we needed to hit today with this video. Like I said, this one, God didn't give me everything I was hoping to get on this. But he really gave me a strong azimuth direction and the right heading, and I believe half of it. I believe it's like a two-step process, and he just gave me the first step of it. So this is huge. I'm very excited about. Like I said, I was gonna do neutrino oscillations today, bro, and instead I'm doing this. This is how important I believe this is. This is like one of my most important videos or lectures I've ever done so far to date. And if you know the shit I put out, that's a pretty damn bold statement that I've made just now. But I made it. Look at my eye. Do I look like I'm faltering at all? I don't think so. So, with this information, we're going to dive deeper. The next 2 weeks, I've got 2 other lectures planned on this stuff that are really going to be interesting. I think you're going to find them very interesting. So tune in, and we'll see if we can't conquer everything together. Just all of it. Fuck it. It's all mine for the taking. Adios, muchachos.
Like, subscribe, submit.